one aspect of toxicity is there's a lot of uncertainty, So if you have an abusive person, you really you don't know everything depends on which side of the bed that person has gotten up. One day they can be charming, one day they can be very abusive. So if you're able to recognize that there's so much of uncertainty, I think it is possible to identify bullying. Question is, if by say you have a fraternity and they abuse you just to get you in, you have to tolerate all that. If that is the culture, you will have to really reflect on what is this relationship with the bully getting you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Future of Coaching webinar. I'm Kifa from Coacharya, and as always, it's great to have you all join us. We'll take a couple of minutes for everybody to join the webinar today, and please feel free to use the chat box to tell us where you're joining us from. I'm in India. Yamini from our team is here. She's the chat box moderator. Thank you, Yamini. So we'll wait for a couple of minutes. So while everybody is joining in, I just have a few updates for you all and a little bit of information regarding CCEUs and how you can claim those through our webinars. So I'm going to share my screen. So as you all know, we have 3 webinar series. One is the Future of Coaching that's happening today. We have Hero's Journey that happens on the 3rd Wednesday each month. And we have Masters in Coaching that happens on the 4th Wednesday. So for each, you can claim either a resource development certificate or a coaching credential certificate. So for Future of Coaching and Hero's Journey, you can claim 1 RD each. And for Masters in Coaching, you can get 1 CC, coaching credential. So if you're wondering where you can use these, I'm sure a lot of coaches already know that you can accumulate all of these and you can use these at the time of renewing your credential. So all you need to do is you attend the full webinar with us on either of these days. And after you've attended the full webinar within the next 48 hours, you will receive an email from our team to claim the certificate. And then there's a link provided in the email. You need to click on the link, fill the survey, and after that, you can download your certificate. We also have thought leadership discussions that we run thrice every month. So you can also claim RDs by attending those thought leadership sessions, and you can watch out for our emails, or if you're on Coach Nook, which is a community network platform, Yamini will share the link for you all there on the chat box. You can log in and you'll get all the details about our thought leadership discussions as well. I'm also going to just take a minute to share with you 3 of our courses that are lined up in August. So on 16th August, we have a course with Ram, Coacharya's co-founder. The session is on Coacharya Coach Supervisor Program, which is for coaches who are either ACC, PCC, or MCC. For more details, you can write to us at community@coacharya.com. Yamini again will put out the details in the chat box. We then have a coaching foundation session with Prakash Rao, Master Certified Coach. That's on August 19th. This would be a session for anybody, a program for anyone who wants to get started with their coaching journey. And the program prepares you for level 1 credentialing. Once again, Yamini will share the link on the chat box about this program. And the last one is advanced coaching with Cindy. She's also our program director and a master certified coach. And this program would be for people who've already completed either their ACC training or are credentialed ACC coaches. So once again, Yamini will share all the details, and you can write to us either at contact@coacharya.com or community@coacharya. So that's it with all the updates. And we are now going to also invite Gayatri to join us for our webinar today. So today's webinar is called From Awareness to Empowerment, and we're going to discuss how one can navigate workplace toxicity. This is a sequel to a webinar that we did previously with Gayatri and Pranav. And as we all know that toxicity has an adverse impact on any organization and the well-being of its employees. So it's crucial to find ways to support employees and have the right mechanism in place in order to navigate any kind of toxicity in the workplace. So today, Pranav, who is the co-founder and CEO of Coacharya, will be in conversation with Gayatri. I'm going to just take a minute and introduce Gayatri for all of us. So Gayatri is an exemplary HR practitioner with 35 years of experience. She has led several projects across leadership assessments, executive coaching, leadership development, and organizational effectiveness. So thank you so much, Gayatri, for joining us today. Thank you, Pranav. I think we're ready to start. And
yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Kiva. So I see that we have folks from various parts of the world here. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you for joining us. The session we did in May was a little more on the macro side of coaching toxic leaders. And we wanted to do a follow-up session based on all the conversations that were had on the chats, inputs on something that would be a little more micro, which is from awareness to empowerment, navigating workplace toxicity. And the outcomes we hope you will get from this discussion and your own inputs is to understand what workplace toxicity looks and feels like, deepen our understanding of what gives rise to toxicity at work, and finally understand how we can heal and empower ourselves to navigate challenges that arise due to workplace toxicity. And Gayatri, I just wanted to reiterate the definition of toxicity before we get started here. It is defined, at least in some forums, as a workplace culture that is disrespectful, non-inclusive, unethical, cutthroat, or abusive. Those all seem like pretty heavy, drastic terms, and it seems like it would be pretty easy to understand if a workplace culture were toxic. It doesn't seem like it would be subtle, but let's get started and start talking about first how we can understand if a workplace is toxic.
Yeah, and I was just listening to Kiva introducing me, saying that exemplary HR person, etc. If I hear it many times and I start believing myself to be the most exemplary HR practitioner, I will soon become toxic, because then I think I know everything. So it's not as simple as being able to identify someone who is in the face of it toxic, or a culture which is in the face of it toxic. So it's much more, difficult to do that. And I wanted to bring out one aspect which was there in the last time's chat about old boys club. So for example, we are all from Coacharya and we help each other, we become very close, etc. But are we isolated? Are we insulated? Because that can also lead to toxicity, and we benefit. The thing about toxic is, like, for example, arsenic is a toxin. In very, very small quantities, it can be a lifesaver. So toxic leaders do a lot of self-display. It may be to an extreme, but a little bit of self-display is something which all coaches perhaps will tell you that, you should be comfortable doing. So that complicates the whole issue of what is toxicity, and whether the question which arose last time in the webinar about whether I am toxic, how do I reflect on that? So I think we'll focus on, like I said, the empowerment of people to handle toxic cultures, and for leaders to make sure that it doesn't spread, And with Pranav's permission, I thought, we talked about toxicity, and which we've gone going down the rabbit hole of all the negativities of it. Now, how do we counter that? So I think I would like you to think about the best possible boss you had, the best boss you have had, and whether you had someone like that. And I would like Kiva to help us understand your perspective on this. So many of you, I think we asked last time, have you had toxic bosses? Almost everyone had encountered a boss who is to some extent toxic. I want to flip it and ask whether you had a really good boss, and get to know from you whether it's possible to have great bosses. Kiva, can you just, so please take a minute here to respond to this question, and then we can kind of look at, okay, what we should not do is all known, but what should we do? What is it that makes a person a great boss, which of course will lead to overall a great culture. So I'll just keep quiet and let you people respond to the Mentimeter survey. Please do take a minute to respond to that.
While that's happening, Gayatri, I was reading a little bit about the Hofstede cultural comparisons, and wondering how that might be playing into. Should I set that up for you, or do you want to just riff on that a little bit?
I can talk about that. So Hofstede cultural comparison talks about 6 variants of, 6 aspects of culture. And I'll just talk about 3 which are very important to toxicity. Okay, so I can send this just a comparison which I've done. Okay, the first one, you're projecting that?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, great. Okay. Oh, okay, you project 6. Yes, no, so only 1 person. I hope more people are going to respond. We have 67 people on the call right now. So looks like, okay, the way the numbers are, it looks like people have not had great bosses, but maybe they haven't had very bad bosses either. So they're somewhere in between, So 1 person is saying no, never had. And
well, it seems like overwhelmingly people generally have had good bosses. So
they have had good bosses. That is what I would have, also thought. So let me just, do you have that? Do you want to project it?
The Hofstede, I don't have it handy, but we can talk through it. So
we can just,
the Hofstede cultural comparisons, there are 5 different headings that are used to rank how different cultures react to certain triggers. So I'll just list them: power distance, masculinity versus femininity, uncertainty avoidance, long-term orientation, indulgent versus restraint.
Can you all see it? Can you see it, Pranav?
I can see it, yeah.
Yeah, so these are the 5 factors like Pranav said. And the 3 of them seem to be, 4 of them seem to be important. So Pranav, there are actually 6, there were initially only 5 factors, but they also added a 6th factor called indulgence and restraint, but it is not validated for all the countries. So the power distance, I've compared US and Mexico and Australia. When the power distance is high, the organization tends to become more hierarchical. The more hierarchical the company, chances of it becoming more toxic are there, because the people can't speak up. They don't feel, everyone calls everyone a sir, or it's bureaucratic, right? Now, individualism versus collectivism. Okay, do people think just individually or they think as a collective. Culturally, Indians tend to think more collectively than, say, the people in USA or Australia. And one aspect of toxicity is the self-centeredness, where your own career and your own goals are more important than that of the collective or the organization. So the higher the score, the more toxic the atmosphere can get.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I just interrupt you there because in the chat box there is a comment about how aggression is favored in the US, and the US does have the highest score for individualism versus collectivism, which
correct. Yeah, it's the highest score across the world. Yeah, 91. You're right.
Yeah.
And then we come to long-term orientation. Okay. Now here, again, when people remember, I remember last time there was a question in the chat saying that when toxicity succeeds, how do you cope with that? And toxicity generally succeeds in the short run. Sometimes the success can be spectacular, like, you can even become a president. But in the long run, there are a lot of ramifications. So if people are long-term oriented, then also it's a positive for a good empowerment and absence of toxicity. Indulgence versus restraint. Okay. This is a society which lives in the moment. Self-gratification is most important, and it's also instant self-gratification. If that is higher, then it becomes likely to be more toxic. And I hope this is right, because I remember picking it up, but there is a lot of restraint in India, because there is this, don't show off. At least it used to be, don't show off, etc. And there are social norms and collectivism already putting a restraint on your indulgence. So higher indulgence, higher the toxicity, So this is something I thought would be interesting. So please put your comments on this, because I'm sure there are others who are also, quite aware of the Hofstad model. And of course, this is just a generalization of what are the things which can affect toxicity. So I will stop.
So what is interesting about that is that toxicity could mean different things in different cultures, and basically makes it all the more complex, right?
Yes.
Deborah's asking when share the resource. Kiva, we could get it. It's Hofstad's culture.
Shall I put it in?
Can share. And we have another poll, which is, have you worked with a toxic leader? And that's being filled out. The next question, Gayatri, for you is, what within a system causes toxicity to rise?
So one thing definitely is inward looking, you're not looking out to see, okay, so we are doing very well and we will go breakneck speed. Everybody is, after targets, etc. So just the narrow target of your company, your goals can lead to toxicity. And then this, it depends on the followers also. So if they are the type who need a lot of validation and are afraid to speak up, it will lead to toxicity. And it can also be because of the way the work is designed, So for example, there is a company where there's always a heavy workload, the role has so many conflicts that people are not able to really reconcile what they should do, what they should not do, conflicts in leadership, or even microcultures within the company and role ambiguity. Those are things which can lead to toxicity. But I think the biggest effect is from the top leader. If the top leader is toxic, the followers tend to emulate that, because it looks like that is what is the path to success. What do you think?
Yeah, it's various. I mean, there's a question on the on being posed also, which is interesting. Which is it? What is individual toxicity versus cultural toxicity? When we get to the solutioning of all of this, there's talk about microcultures, which we can get into in a second. But I think there's an aspect of bullying that toxic leaders embrace, and I think there are also how subtle or how direct they are can make it easier or harder to recognize whether someone's being toxic, right? So I think the question goes back to how do we identify it? And then we'll get into, in the next half of this, how to actually handle it once the awareness is clear to us. So we can.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Gayatri.
No, so I was saying that, how to handle it, of course, is first to know that, you're going down a rabbit hole of toxicity. So if you stay there, you are likely to be further sucked into it. So it's important to have allies outside the work also, because you have a culture. If it's a microculture and it's in your team, if your life is all about the team, you're socializing with the team, everything depends around the team, it's difficult to realize that toxicity. It's just like the old boys club, they aren't just playing golf, they're just going to bars, etc. They're not doing anything wrong. But when an outsider looks at it, they feel that they just cannot enter this. They feel that there is favoritism. They feel that decisions are taken without transparency, So I think an outside-in perspective is very important. And for oneself to be able to handle toxic leaders, it's just like bullying. You need to stand up, call it out, and weigh your options.
Let's get into that, Gayatri. So I think everyone here is looking for the answers to how to deal with toxic leaders. In a personal situation, one can stand up to a bully, right? You can get up and confront them and say what you need to say. How do you do that in a work situation where that bully might be, the person can also determine whether you keep your job or not?
Yeah, that is true. So in that case, it's okay. So you weigh your options, right? Okay. So I need to keep my job and the work culture is toxic, but I really don't have any options. But it is just, right now, I don't have any options. You can still make a plan, and keep developing. And some of the articles and literature I read is the best way to handle this kind of toxicity is empower yourself by being good at your work, keep developing yourself so that, you become more worthwhile, as in your own self-image as well as to the company. Toxic leaders, just like bullies, choose their victims, So concentrating on oneself and trying to become the best you can will help you handle that toxicity.
Pranav, I just had a question. Yeah, Gayatri, just related to this, I was just thinking that for people who do recognize bullying, right? Maybe they'll still try and figure a way out. But what about people who actually don't have the awareness like the first stage is to actually first know that this is what it feels like, and sometimes I think like Pranav said a while back, it is subtle and it's not as apparent. So what are some of those, triggers that one can identify to know that they are actually in a situation where there is toxicity?
So one is, of course, how do you feel? Do you feel ashamed of what you're doing, or do you feel dependent on those people? Or are you losing sleep over these things? Because this toxicity and bullying has adverse effects, including perhaps an effect on your sleep, definitely an effect on, how you feel. The one aspect of toxicity is there's a lot of uncertainty, So if you have an abusive person, you really you don't know everything depends on which side of the bed that person has gotten up. One day they can be charming, one day they can be very abusive. So if you're able to recognize that there's so much of uncertainty, I think it is possible to identify bullying. Question is, if by, say, you have a fraternity and they abuse you just to get you in, you have to tolerate all that. If that is the culture, you will have to really reflect on what is this relationship with the bully getting you, okay? Because there is something which you're getting out of it. Then the question is this the only way to get it? What else can you do, and what will you lose? So you have, say you have a school gang, 8 people, and there'll be the alpha dog, alpha members who will be ruling everyone else. But if the others stay because they feel some privileges of being in that group. So you have to take a call on at what cost are you getting those privileges, and what impact are you causing by being in that group. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'd also done a poll before the webinar where we asked people what comes in the way of actually being able to navigate toxicity. So if it's okay, I'd like to just share the results that came out for the audience as well. So just a second. So can you think what makes workplace toxicity challenging to navigate? So we had 4 options: low awareness of toxic traits, low psychological safety, lack of choice, and misaligned values. And we can see the result here. So we have about 41% saying low psychological safety, 24% saying low awareness of toxic traits, which is a fairly big number, right? So I think that's where the question came from. Sometimes people actually find it challenging to also, like you said, right? You can be in a confusing state where there might be a lot of self-doubt and a lot of uncertainty right? Because it also affects your self-esteem to a degree and your self-confidence. So maybe you actually go into that zone where you think that you are the one who's at fault, or probably you aren't good enough, but maybe there's something else at play.
Yeah. So, there was a chat question saying that toxicity it's gender agnostic. And I want to give an example of that, which happened to me. And we were in my very first job. There was only one guy and we were all women. And so the toxicity can come like this. So suppose your boss asks you to work longer, okay? There's even a competition to please the boss by working longer and longer and longer. And if someone says, no, I'll not work, the whole group turns on him or her. And this happened with us also. So of course, now when I look back, I feel it's toxic. When I was in the in-group, it didn't feel so toxic. But when you're in a toxic cult, there were aspects of toxicity. I don't know whether I'll call it toxic, because it was not fully toxic. There were some learning opportunities, etc. But in a toxic culture, you're like, okay, so I'm doing facilitation. If I can stand up and talk, I'm the queen, So there's somebody else struggling. So this other person struggled, but he had a lot of other strengths, which we didn't see at that time because this was, late 80s. So technologically, he was amazing, but we didn't think we needed to learn technology that much at that time. So you don't look at the strengths of the person. You tend to start looking at the fault, and then slowly, the isolation happens. So, and we, like I said, we were all women, and there was this one person who was, at our level. There was, we had secretary staff and all who were all almost equal. The gender distribution there was equal. But yes, it is gender agnostic, and it starts from labeling a person as not so good. Then you will find more and more things which are not so good. So if you can rack your brain on what is good, so they talk about this appreciative inquiry. I think it's a great technique for getting at least oneself out of the toxicity, to see what is that other person bringing and where can we include them,
Yeah. So there's, as we were talking about gender, I wanted to bring up a couple of articles that I read, had some interesting insights that I wanted to share here quickly, and then we can get into the solutioning of this, which might address some other questions on the comments on the chat as well. The article, one of the articles that I read said that research shows that women are 41% more likely to experience toxic workplace culture than men. And the data that they had put together showed that the majority of that was happening in male-dominated professions. When they went down to female-dominated professions, the toxicity kind of dissipated a bit. The two things that came out of that for me, one is that the toxic culture in these situations was 10 times more powerful than compensation in predicting attrition, which like the Great Resignation is an example of that. Also, employees in toxic environments are more likely to be bad-mouthing publicly, privately, less interested in work, and generally also suffering from personal wellness issues like anxiety, depression, etc. The other interesting point that was made in a different article is, and I see a comment here, so I wanted to bring it up. There's a chance that men who lack traditional masculine leadership traits but possess traits that could make them great leaders are being ignored. And it speaks of men generally, but I think it can be applied to women as well. So the idea is that being less bold, less reckless, less self-centered, and being more altruistic, ethical, and self-aware, those are sort of the competing emotions. And I think that's a good lead into what we should get into now, which is how do we deal with it now that we are aware? How do we deal with it?
Yeah. So, see, let's look at what are the characteristics of toxicity. One is narcissism. Everything is about themselves, etc. So, I think a lot of the dealing has to be done by calling out the toxicity and questioning it. And it is difficult to do it, like I said, if even the CEO is there. But even we were talking about Pranav and Kiva and I were talking about, and said that then let the board be empowered. So look for a place, where the board is at least empowered. It will call out toxicity and people take responsibility. The other one is extreme lack of empathy is another aspect of toxicity. So how is that happening in your company? The other is poor communication, absolutely opaque. You don't know what decisions are being made. You don't know whether the company is doing well, it's not doing well. It's like, again, saying that, they'll come and project a picture of, great rosy results, etc. The third is, of course, a microaggression, which is mostly related to race and often to gender also, and psychological safety is, of course, very important. And in my opinion, it's not an expert opinion or anything. I think the parameters you use to judge your leadership matters a lot. And what Pranav was talking about is, are you only seeing results? And results can come out of toxicity. It can also come out of aggression and pushing people in a positive way. So all aggression need not be toxic. Sometimes they make you go beyond what you think you can do. It's like a coach in tennis. Okay, practice a lot more. It's just that all that pushing has to do with the other person's ambition, not your own. So if you're aggressively pushing for your own good, you will become toxic. If you're aggressively pushing for the collective good, it need not necessarily become toxic. Now, psychological safety is, of course, also come up a lot in the poll. Also, it's one of the highest factors. And how do you bring in a culture of that? Is it possible to bring it? Of course, we're talking about the top-down leadership. I think there is a hope to take it from the bottom up, at least make your, that's why many companies, when the leader leaves, they take many people follow them wherever they go, because nobody is really, people don't experience the company culture, right? They'll experience the microculture, which is there. And basic aspect of psychological safety is also assurance that you can make mistakes and learn and share ideas, and they don't embarrass people. Like I myself have, I'm a freelancer, but I remember going to some meetings with a big 5 consultant where I was also part of the team, and they were trying to tell me that, you're not dressed well, you should be wearing, you should go buy, clothes and wear suits, etc. Now, okay, that was not my only job, right? I'm a freelancer, but the kind of pressure which I felt, now if I'd been working there, I would have been miserable, because you're trying to create clones, everybody in the suited, booted atmosphere, which is changing now. So you have to give people the freedom to choose and also contribute,
Sure. So
I'll be very interested in hearing other people's view on this, and maybe, we can put the word cloud, asking people, they said most of them have had good bosses, only one person said they never had a good bosses. So what are these things? Let's learn from the good bosses and see how we take people from this extreme and pull them and put take them towards the people who actually empower others and do good for others. Can we do that, Kiva?
Sure.
So while Kiva is doing that, I wanted to summarize some things that you said. The idea that there are stakeholders in play that could influence the way a leader behaves. There's also so we talk a lot about the individual. What does the individual do? They can stand up for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They can seek community help. They can just put their head down and work hard and show results, and those results will potentially satisfy the boss. But there, I think, also is a need for systemic organizational interventions, right? And one of the ideas that is being posed in some of the articles I was reading is that there seem to be like 4 or 5 things that can be done at an organizational level. I'm going to read them out as headings, and then we can dive into whatever makes sense. But the headings are: top leaders commit to and sustain focus on cultural detox. Just a little bit about that shareholder theory you were talking about. Distributed leaders shape healthy microcultures. So the middle managers and supervisors under the top leaders are creating healthy situations within their own business units. Establish healthy social norms, which I think is a communication, healthy communication between units, and redesign work to reduce stress. So the way that delegation is happening, and there's a concept of subtraction, which is subtractive change. So for instance, if you are on a supply chain, are you talking to the front line, a supply chain for a grocery store, for example, you're talking to the frontline worker who's stocking the shelves and understanding whether or not they are, stocking things that are not necessary, and sort of subtracting the work from there. So there's organizationally, there are all these different things that can be done. All of them can be measured. Therefore, we have now active KPIs on what's happening with leaders that can then influence whether or not they need to be shifting their tone to some of the values that we are talking about. Be more empathetic, be more understanding, etc. Any thoughts from you?
Yeah, so I think reducing stress is one of the things about work design, right? Are you giving the right work allocation? Is the workload okay? Or is it that people are encouraged to compete? So long back, I remember, in many of these financial institutions like Goldman Sachs and Citibank, etc., people would work, they would get double the pay, but they would be asked to work double. Almost, literally. I have had instances where I've gone for a dinner with a friend who was a VP, and we're just going out, and he calls someone in and says, I need this on my table by Monday. Now, this is Friday night, okay? And no blinking, nothing. Everybody is working, and he did that when he was in their place. So this brings me to the point which Harish is raising about new entrance to the workplace. I think he's talking about allyship, which will come if the bigger companies like HLL and ITC, etc., used to do induction together. So you get a lot of people who you become friends with and who can help become your allies. The other thing I think is having mentorship, and using those mentors properly. So as a mentee, so suppose I'm a new entrant and I'm a mentee, it's also my responsibility to look after myself. So if I'm facing pressure, you don't necessarily have to go and talk to the managers. But if you have some misgivings about something which has happened, maybe you can talk to a mentor outside. So allyship and mentorship. And if it comes at the beginning of your work, then you don't tolerate it later, Otherwise, it's like, yeah, this is the case, grind your teeth and work through it and you'll do great. But what if I lose my health and perhaps even, have a major health crisis before I even reach that place? So yes, that is very important. The middle manager, there's a lot of research saying that it is the middle managers who are most responsible for toxicity as well as for detoxing. Okay, so how are they empowered? And I think as coaches, it's a huge opportunity for us to train these middle managers, to recognize toxicity, not be tolerant of it, and help others who, experience it. And here again, there was another question about internal coaches and external coaches. Internal coaches, coaching these managers is fine actually, because these middle managers are just normal middle managers, talking about them as being toxic. But when they are toxic, it is difficult for internal coaches to really coach them. It may be very difficult for the external coaches also to coach them, but for internal coaches, there is a lot of conflict of interest. So, give some assistance, allyship, mentorship to the new entrant. Give a coaching or some other leadership inputs and resources for the middle management, and encourage this aspect of questioning, without any retribution or punishment for doing the questioning. I think those would be the major factors in reducing toxicity in workplace.
Yeah. So, I mean, Kiva, I know you have a poll to share. I just want to summarize what you just said in a way that I understand it, at least, is that there are different levels that need to be addressed. There are different spaces that need to be addressed from the minutiae to the whole in order for toxicity to be truly, dealt with. One is at the macro level, the entire organization, the stakeholders, the board. Below that, there are the leaders. Below that, there are the distributed leaders, the middle managers, supervisors, etc. And then there are the workers. And I think the idea is that, and then there's the individual. So they're all at those different levels. There should be measurements of how toxicity is playing out. And I think if we were to, it's not just the one individual, it's the entire system that needs to be addressed in entirety. Kiva, you have poll results to share for us.
I'm so happy to see this word cloud, because we've been talking about how the spectrum of empathy, the toxic leaders are really, really low, and that has come up as something which is very important. On this note of empathy, again, if the spectrum is too much to the other extreme, what are called as empaths, you can actually suffer a lot, because then you take the toxicity onto yourself. So you need to have just the right amount of empathy to handle this toxicity, not start saying, so again, I'm going to abusive relationship, especially in marriages. Many times the spouses will defend the other person, saying, no, not so bad. There are some good things. And that can be, like too much of empathy, to the extent of becoming an empath, where you take on those feelings of the person you're dealing with onto yourself to your detriment. I'm just trying to look as to what is not very important, or it is really small.
Yeah,
most of these are important issues.
Yeah, they're all important. And they're also being said in different ways, right? It all kind of leads back to the
so. Yeah.
base, the base words: empathy, trust, honesty, integrity, transparency. Those are coming up as the largest ones. There's such raw basic needs. It's not that complicated.
Yeah.
Yet
correct.
We suffer from having to have these discussions around them. Although it's nice to see something positive for a change in our webinar, Gayatri. Use the word toxic, I don't know how many times at this point.
Yeah, and see, so empathy and transparency, and I think that is when we talk about poor communication as a indicator of toxicity, the transparency in communication becomes very important. You know, are you demanding that transparency? Are you asking questions? You know, so they were in this when you have psychological safety, you have productive conflict. So is conflict being kind of just put down instead of being taken up and having a productive talk around, having difficult conversations? So productive conflict is what will change the nature of the company, or even take it in a different direction, and definitely improve creativity, So
There's an interesting comment here, kind of related to what you just said. Can company profit and toxicity? Can company profit influence I think what's being said here is, can we correlate profit to better behavior, which is an interesting.
Not always, but again, it's the long-term orientation. How long will it last, and who profits? Is it just the CEO and his cronies, or does the whole company profit? When you say company profit, is it just a number, or does it mean a lot to others, and will it last? Because attrition, whether it is quiet quitting or otherwise, is going to be there. And
what's the opportunity
nowadays,
cost?
and we suppose the toxicity is in terms of microaggression, or even just harassment. Those are being taken very, very seriously. So empires can crumble with just one lawsuit. So it's not going to. You're on thin ice if your profit is coming out of the toxicity and the way you behave.
But let me just we have a few minutes left, so I just wanted to also start to close down the conversation a little bit here, and I'll throw it out. I went to see the Barbie movie with my youngest daughter, who is 7 years old, and obviously the messaging in there was a little bit above her head, and she I may not have understood all the neo-feminist, self-consciousness, gender tropes that were being played out. But the one thing that she did say, and Gayatri, I'm just closing out just some thoughts of my own, and then I'll hand it over to you. I asked her what she felt about the movie, and she said, I think the movie is about someone that is understanding that they're not perfect, but they're trying their best to be. And I was sort of blown away by the answer, because it was literally the essence of the movie. And I think I want to sort of, because we've used the word toxic so much, and I want to make sure that we leave on a positive note, is that at the end of the day, I think everyone is not perfect. I think having an awareness of that imperfection is 80% of the way to getting to be be their better selves. Gayatri, I'll hand it to you to close it out, and then Kiva, if you have any closing comments.
So I think one big, let me say, two things which would make a person less, two qualities which will make a person less toxic. One is gratitude. Acknowledge what others have done, what you have got, what you need to be grateful for. The second is apologize. Like I said, I'm also part of many of the old girls, old boys club. But when you recognize that it is hurting someone, can you accept and say sorry? It's a powerful word. So when you transgress knowingly or unknowingly, can you apologize and sincerely make it, express it to the person? I think that changes the whole atmosphere and the culture will not remain as toxic if those two things are there.
Yeah, I think wonderfully shared. And I think for me, the biggest takeaway today was the power of open communication. I think in all of this, at times, it feels like either your need hasn't been met or hasn't been understood, and there clearly seems to be a gap in what would help you and what is being offered, be it systemically, be it at an individual level, directly with your manager. So I think I'm just leaving away thinking about just the power of open communication in creating change, or at least that being the first step towards any form of change. Yeah. So I think any other closing thoughts, Pranav, Gayatri? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I have, like, one thing I realized is I know so little about this subject, because the more and more I get the questions and all, and I feel like, okay, I don't know that much, So it's been a great learning for me to get the questions and also respond to them. And after the last webinar, we were going to write a blog, which we will be, publishing on the first webinar. We'll also do the same for this one, include the questions, and perhaps, like, for example, the systemic way of dealing with toxicity. Since Pranav Ramanathan is a guru of systemic coaching, I think he'll probably address it also. So there's a lot to converse about further on this topic. And thank you all for being here and being part of the webinar. I have been on the other side of the webinar and said, why can't I speak? I'm sorry, you people are not able to, voice your opinion, but the chat has been quite alive and very great help for me to be able to articulate my thoughts. And Kiva has been an amazing host, and Pranav, as usual, the fireside feels very warm when you're around and I'm chatting with you, So thank you.
Sure.
And thanks to all of you who have been part of this webinar.
Thank you, Gayatri. So a couple of thoughts. One is that we can continue this conversation asynchronously, and perhaps the blog and some of the resources that we've been citing, the articles, we'll include those. And we may be able to actually not copy the chat in its entirety, but pull out some of the comments.
So what I can put some of the
we can do it on
in
the blog when we post that.
Okay, I'll do it on the blog. Yeah. I think that's easier to.
So thank you everyone for joining, and Kiva, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gayatri. Thank you, Pranav. It was a really, really interesting conversation and lots to learn. And I think, like you said, Gayatri, the learning never ends, with more questions and more just thoughts coming in from other people. I think that's the only way to learn more about this.
So the fact that, people are here on the webinar because they think there is more to know.
Yeah.
I think recognizing that will make you a little bit humble, right?
Absolutely. And I think something that
you
shared,
that humbleness to gratitude and ability to apologize as traits which will take you away from toxicity.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for joining us today. And as we're closing out, just one last update for everybody that I forgot to mention at the start of the session. We have a thought leadership session tomorrow with Priya Ramnarayan, and the session starts at 6:30 p.m. IST. If you would like to join the session, you can write to us at community@coacharya.com. And the session is on seeking the internal coach. It's guidance from the Bhagavad Gita, and it's a community-led initiative. So Priya is going to be the facilitator, and it's going to be really the community coming together. You can bring your friends along. It's a space that's absolutely free of cost, so anybody can join in. So we hope all of you will join us there as well. So yeah, I think that's it from our end, and we'll all see you next week as well for the Hero's Journey webinar. Yeah, thank you, Pranav. Thank you so much, Gayatri. Yeah.
Okay, so somebody is asking which email to send the note to.
Yeah, it's at community@coacharya.com.
Okay.
Yeah, or you can write to me directly at kiva@coacharya.com as well. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Pranav.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you all. Bye.